Hi, I'm Carrie, and welcome to episode 18 of the Sego Fibers podcast.
Gravel road, I've been asked to slow down. Fireplace, do you know how? Piles of paper, my desk is out. Who will care for the world out? Rest with me, close to curtains, brew some herbal tea.
Wow, it has been a really long time since I have podcasted last. About a week or so ago, I uploaded a new video, which was pretty exciting, but I recorded that back in January of this year and haven't made any videos since then. And so, back in January, I recorded an Everything I Made in 2023 video. It was so much fun to make and look back at all the projects. But life was busy and I never got around to putting it together and uploading it. So I finally got around to it last week and it was great. It reminded me again how much I love podcasting, and yes, I want to get back into the swing of things a bit. Life's been good. There's just been a lot of change to get used to. My oldest started preschool at the beginning, like last fall, so about a year ago, and getting used to school life, even on like a very minimal preschool level, was some things to get used to, a new community to be involved in, and all those things. And we had a busy summer, and it was just one thing after another. So that's okay. But now that summer's over, school has started again, and I'm a little bit more used to the school routine now. I'm hoping to jump back into recording and make some fun videos for you guys. So today's video is going to be a normal podcast where I'll talk about finished objects, works in progress, and what you can expect in the future. And yeah, so since it's October and I haven't podcasted since January, we have a lot to catch up on. So I'm only going to talk about a chunk, like the first chunk of finished objects from this year. And I inadvertently created a color palette, and this was totally unintentional. Some of these are whips, some of these are finished objects. But today we're going to be talking about lots of neutrals and bits of pink and purple, which is like, I don't know, this might be my favorite color palette. This was unintentional, but clearly we have a theme going on. Alrighty, now to figure out what to do with these things. First, I'm going to talk about what I'm wearing, and this is actually my most recent finished object. So I just finished this yesterday. So excited. This is the Adventitious top, I'm sorry, there's going to be a number of really hard to say names in this episode, so I apologize in advance for getting them wrong, but I will do my best. So this top is Adventitious by Olga Putano, and I'll have links for everything in the description in case you're curious for more information. This pattern was originally published in one of the Lene magazines. I'm not sure which one, but I waited for it to come out as a single pattern because I was just excited for it and I thought it was beautiful. It's a V-neck. It has this lovely lace detail. It's the same on the front as the back. And it's drop shoulder, oversized, with little teeny sleeves. And yeah, I just thought the details were so pretty. And there's a nice ribbing detail in the back that's actually made with short rows. And I thought it was actually quite clever how she did that. It's worked bottom up. It was originally designed with a lace weight yarn and on 2-point-something millimeter needles. The yarn was pricier than I wanted to pay or harder to come by. And so I decided to substitute Knitting for Olive cotton merino, which I was really excited to use. I got this yarn previously during one of their charity sales over a year ago. I ordered 4 balls and I figured, oh, that'll definitely be enough for a tee, and it's a lot of yarn, so I'm sure you can make a number of different tees with 4 balls of cotton merino. However, I did lose yarn chicken very badly. Since I bought this yarn so long ago, I knew it would be hopeless to try and find the same dye lot, because I think Knitting for Olive produced a whole bunch of cotton merino and then it became out of stock and it was really hard to get and everywhere. And then they made a whole big batch more this year, and so that's when I was able to get my extra ball. So the color I used is mole, and it's like a cool soft brown, which is this, and then this is the replacement. That's working better. And you can kind of see that they're basically kind of the same color, but the one in the back, which is the new ball, is a bit warmer. And so the part where I ran out of yarn, like I said, it's worked bottom up. So I started down here, worked up, split for sleeves. I did the 2 top areas here, and then I started working the back, and I got probably an inch. Oh yeah, you can see the line. I probably got that far after the sleeve split, so just a teeny bit. And then, so this whole back yoke is the new ball of yarn, which you can see is warmer. But you know what? That's okay. And in the back, I'm not gonna worry about it. And yeah, it's fine. I'm just glad I was able to use the same yarn. I would rather use a slightly different dye lot of the same yarn with the same feel and fibers and everything than try and match up the color a little bit better with a totally different yarn. So, and it's on the back, so it's fine. And yeah, it's good. I'm really happy with this tee. I knit the size 3, which I think was a little bit oversized for my size, not quite recommended, but in the pattern photos I loved how big the model was kind of like styling it. I liked how she has this one photo where she's like got her arm up and like doing a cool thing. And it's like, oh, I like the fit of it. Not like I'm gonna go around walking with my arm like this and just say, hey. But you know, I like the general vibe. But since I did switch out yarns and the Knitting for Olive cotton merino is a little bit thicker than the yarn that the pattern used, I ended up sizing up my needles to accommodate for the yarn. Anyway, I will double check like the actual measurements of the finished tee because I actually haven't measured it yet. And I'll put here if I was on gauge for knitting the size 3, or if I ended up with a garment closer to a different size. I'm kind of curious, so I'll put that here. Yes, I used a 3.25 millimeter needle, and for one tiny part of the ribbing, I used the 2.75 millimeter needle. It was really fun to knit. Last year I made the Cumulus tee by PetiteKnit, and that is just stockinette, and I found myself getting super bored, and I really did not want to keep going on that one. And however, with this one, it has this really fun lace, and there is still a lot of stockinette, but the lace is really engaging, and I found it to be the perfect balance because the lace was really interesting and fun and got my brain engaged without being overwhelming. I got into a good rhythm with it, so I didn't have to look at the chart all the time. I did reference it because the different, this side piece of the chart and then this middle piece of the chart, this section and then this section, they have different row repeats. So It's not the easiest to memorize, but after a while I did get a hang of it and I got a rhythm and I could go pretty quickly through it. And then once you get through the lace section, then you get like, oh yeah, easy breezy, stockinette rest time. Then you have the exact same lace on the back and then more stockinette, yay. And so it was actually a really fun knit and I was going really well through it. I did all the original yarn in like 3 or 4 weeks, something like that, which for tiny needles I feel like is pretty good. And then once I ran out of yarn, I had to order more and it's like, ugh. Then I set it down, started working on other things. And so yeah, I started this back in May. So probably sometime in June, I used up all of the first batch of yarn and then I ordered more. But then I didn't pick it back up again with the new yarn until, I don't know, October. So it's like, oh, what can I do? But then I finished the back yoke and the sleeves in like 3 or 4 days. So it was like really quick for a light fingering weight kind of tee. I'm glad it didn't have to wait all the way till next summer, because at first I was like, oh man, it's October, it's chilly outside, it's actually sweater weather now. Do I really need to finish this tee, or do I just put it on hold until spring when it's starting to get a little bit warm and I'm excited for warm weather? Then I have a quick thing to finish when that season rolls around. It's a good option. But then something hit me, I guess this past week, where it's like, hey, I've got some whips that have been lingering for a while. Let's just get them done. Let's just do it. I had this like lots of finishing mojo. It's like, let's just clear the decks, clean sweep, finish all the things that have been lingering, and let's go. So I started with this one and I'm really excited about it. So the next finished object I'd like to talk about is the Stitches sweater by Kudovakika or Veronika Lindberg. And this was actually a test knit, which was super fun. I really like Kudovakika as a designer for test knits. She was fun. I would totally test knit for her again. She's releasing a book this year, which I'm very excited about. Can't wait to see it. And she had a pool, like in her newsletter maybe, you could see she invited a group of people to be like test knitters for the book and just had to be like dedicated and stuff like that for it. It's like, I was so tempted to sign up for it, but it's like, ooh, got a lot else going on this year. Probably shouldn't sign up for like quick turnaround test knits, but if I didn't have so much other things going on, I would totally have done that. Been so much fun. Anyway, so I'm excited for her book. But this is her Stitches sweater, and it's so fun. I started and finished this in February. I love the colors. I kind of went for a low contrast colorwork look. So like, this is decent. You can see the zigzags. This, like the brown and the white, is obviously high contrast, and you can see here, but between these two colors, there's not a huge difference. Like this one is pinker and this one is more purple, but I actually really like that and I was curious to see what it would be like. So I ended up using all stash for this, which was so fun. I got some yarn for Christmas last year and I used a fair chunk of it for this. This has a pretty big gauge. I forget what the gauge is. I'll try and put it in. But I ended up knitting on 5mm needles. And in case you're like, wow, this is a very deep yoke of colorwork, you would be right. Because I was mainly just paying attention to stitch gauge and I did not actually get row gauge, which ended up to be an issue. But I didn't notice until it was done. So I was like, well, oh well. So if you think the colorwork part looks funny on me, it's because my row gauge is off. It's not because of the pattern. Because I used a bunch of different stash yarn for this project, it would be way too complicated for me to like say all the million different things that are in this sweater right now, because I held 3 strands together for each color. Some overlapped, some did not. And so all of the information about exact yarns and exact yardages for each one are on my Ravelry page, which is linked below. So if you're curious, all the real information is on that Ravelry page. But yeah, I held 2 strands of fingering weight yarn and 1 strand of like a lace mohair or alpaca thing together. So for each color it has 3 strands, and it was actually so fun because doing it this way meant I could use a bunch of fingering weight scraps, or if I have like 2 skeins of a color, that was enough to get the body of the sweater done. It was really great for using up stash, and it was so fun to play with color. Oh, okay. I realized that my swatch for this, I did like a really crazy swatch, testing out and like painting with yarn to see what colors I wanted to do. I left it downstairs where my daughter is taking a nap, so I won't go get it now, but I'll insert a picture or some B-roll or something, because it was so much fun. It was a really fun swatch to make. I spent like a whole evening just like playing with all the different yarn scraps I could find, and it's like, oh, what color does this combo make, and what does this one do? So it was a really fun challenge, and I could see like for future colorwork projects, just swatching a whole bunch of different colors together in different ways, or just combining different colors together for like a marled effect. Like, it's a really fun process if you're into it. So now it's time to talk about my next finished object. And if you're wondering why anything might be different, maybe it's brighter, maybe I look slightly different, I don't know. I had some technical issues while filming this last part just after I finished talking about the stitches sweater, and it's now a few days later. So I'm just trying to jump back into it, pick up where I left off, which I believe was right between finished objects, so that's handy. So let's move on to the next one, and my next finished object to share with you is this cute little croissant. This, I'm sure you know, is the Sophie Shawl by PetiteKnit, and this is my first one that I made, and I don't think it's going to be my last. It was so much fun to knit. It was great, and I knit this in about a week. I used for this one, which is I think about the medium size. There's a small, medium, and large, I believe, and I used like 2 skeins of worsted weight yarn. And this yarn is special because I bought a fleece in Moab, and I had it, oh yeah, so I don't believe I've talked about where I'm from. So I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and like where I live is pretty urban, but all around the rest of the state is fairly rural, and so there's plenty of farms. And there's a city called Moab, and it is beautiful. There's like 2 national parks there, and there's a farm with sheep, and one of our trips over, I was able to pick up 2 fleeces, and one was brown, which is this one, and then I got another one that was white. And there's a wool mill here in Salt Lake that's family run, super small. It's just like a mom and pop thing that they do in their, like, out of their house, which I'm shocked at. I'm not quite sure how they fit the giant like mill machines and like the carders and all the things like in their house. Anyway, it's in a neighborhood, so you would never know it driving by. But anyway, so they spun the yarn for me, and this one was from a sheep named Joser, and it's CVM, and it's really squishy. I love it. If you love like non-superwash rustic type yarns, this one is definitely on the softer end. Like, it's not as soft as like a superwash merino for sure, but it's like, I had no problem having it next to skin, and it is so warm and cozy. It is fall right now, and I'm very excited for the weather to get cooler so I can wear this. And because it's brown, it'll go with everything, and it's just like the perfect size for wrapping around and bundling up. So yeah, let's show you. So this is half it, and then, yeah. So it only took me a week to make it. I took it on a trip, and it was just fun, so. So I'll probably wear it something like this. I haven't like really worn it out yet because when I finished it, it was too warm to wear, but oh, it's so cute. I'm just excited about it. And I think it'll just go with everything. It'll go with my coat. And yeah. And because it's like worsted weight yarn, which is thicker than I typically knit with, and there's only one strand, it was a really nice project to try and learn how to knit without looking. It's something I've been really intimidated by, and even though I've been knitting for like, I don't know, maybe 15 years or something, I don't even know. Not all of that time was like obsessively, which is as I currently am. But yeah, I never have really tried to knit without looking. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to see my yarny friend, my sister-in-law, and we'll both try together and we'll have moral support. And so I remember sitting on the couch with her and it's like, okay, Michelle, I'm going to try and knit without looking. And she's like, okay, I'm going to try and crochet without looking, because she's a crocheter. And for one, I think her job is a lot harder. So I'm not sure if she is able to do that or not. But yeah, I'll check in with her next time I see her. But I was able to get better at doing it on this project because it's just garter, you knit each row, and the only time I would look down is when I was getting to an edge, which has this like I-cord there, and then every once in a while there's increases or decreases, but it's no big deal. But yeah, it was a really fun project and I'm excited about the finished object. Can't wait to wear it. I really want to cast on another one with some different worsted weight yarn and keep practicing. But yeah, I'm really happy with this one. My next finished object also uses some of that same farm yarn that I had spun last year, and it is a cardigan, the Mouliné Cardigan by Lene Holme Samsøe, and it's for my husband. So this is the other yarn that I had. So like I said, one of the fleeces I got was brown and the other one was white. So for some of it, I had yarn spun that was only with the brown, which made this color. So this was just one fleece on its own. And then I blended like half of the brown fleece with all of the white fleece because that one was smaller. And it made this kind of gray heathered yarn. And I just think it is really pretty. And so yeah, this is the label I made for it. There's the sheep. The brown one is Joser and the white one was Job. Those are the sheep. And then there's the info on that. If you're curious, I think I have 4 of these in my Etsy shop right now. But yeah, with some of it I made this cardigan and I love how the fabric came out. I think it's really fun. It reminds me of some of the Noro yarn, not where it's like super color changing and stripy, but you definitely get color texture without it repeating at all, which I think is really fun. And the drape is so nice. Like it's kind of is fuzzy. I don't know if you can tell. It's a little bit fuzzy and yeah. And my husband is typically used to much more like soft yarns, like definitely merino, that sort of style. But he's able to wear this like next to skin, like it's a cardigan, so you're always gonna have a shirt underneath, but he'll wear a t-shirt with it like bare on his arms and he says it's totally fine. He says it's not the softest yarn in the world, but it's fine to wear next to skin. And according to him, any man should be able to wear this next to skin. Don't be a pansy about it. That's his words. I just thought that was really funny. Yeah, I don't have any problem with it. Yeah, and let's see. Let's do the details of the project. So this was the first time I'd knit my husband a garment, and I'm glad I made a cardigan because I feel like that's really useful for him. His office is down in the basement, and so it's colder down there in the winter, and like non-super wash wool like this is so warm. Like you put it on and immediately you're like, whoa, who turned the temperature up 10 degrees? This is great. And the bulk of this project only took me a month. I was really surprised at how fast it went because I was thinking, okay, for a men's garment, it's going to take longer, all these things. But it was the same as any other sweater that I would make. So that was really nice. And I made the size medium for him. I kind of ignored sizing recommendations by the designer because it's, I think, intended for women with like kind of an oversized fit, and I just knew my husband would style it differently, so I measured some of his sweaters and saw like, okay, so here's your actual bust measurement, here's some of your sweaters that you like, and so I just tried to match the garment size in the pattern to something that he currently already has and likes. So that's how I chose a size. And when it came to yoke, I know that like yoke depth, this part can be a little bit deeper for men, or you might need more stitches for your arms or something like that. So I added like two of the raglan increases. I just added 2 of those to the yoke. I don't know if it was totally necessary, but it fits fine. So I'm glad I did that. Yeah, so let's take a look. Yeah, so let's see. So it's an interesting, let's see. I'm not quite sure what the construction is for this, to be honest, because it's similar to a drop shoulder in the sense that you have these kind of lines on the back of the shoulder. They sit right here. There's like a sleeve cap, right? There's a sleeve cap right here. There's also raglan shaping towards the bottom of the armhole. So it's like a mix of things, but it fits really well, and I'm quite pleased with the fit and the construction. On my husband, it is more fitted, and I think he likes that. But it's not tight, and it doesn't look stretched when it's on him. And I knitted it longer because trying it on him and all the things, like it's just, that's how he wanted to wear it, and so I just went off that, and it's a really good length. I'll make sure I put all of the measurement info on the Ravelry page. I don't think I've done that yet, so I need to update that. And yeah, so here's that. And I put in this little tag. And I think that tag kind of had to earn its name because even though the bulk of the sweater took a month to make, I ended up having to redo parts of it because of just changes that needed to be made. And yeah, so it ended up being more effort than either of us expected, but that's okay. So initially, my husband Nathan was like, oh, just surprise me. I don't want to try it on in the process. I just want to see it done at the end. And I'm over here thinking like, okay, that means there's a very high chance I'm going to have to rip some of this out and fix it, because how often do I get it perfect the first time? Like never. So it's like, okay, well, with this being, if that's what you want, this is your first garment. Okay, we'll just go through this together. I accept the risk. I know I'm gonna have to rip out some of this. Okay, I accept that. And so we did that, and then the pattern calls for a ribbed button band. And by the way, that kind of button band is super quick. I started it just to kind of see what it was like, and I was like, oh wow, this is really nice. I like it. It was so much faster than I was expecting. But then after looking at it, I was thinking, I don't know. I'm really curious about a double knit button band. I've heard about them, I've seen them, they look nice, but I've never done one. I kind of want to try it. And so I tried it, and it's slower. It is much, much slower. And it took a while to figure out what the rate of pickup should be. I think I ended up doing every row, like pickup stitches in every row along. It was definitely more than what was called for with the ribbed button band. But yeah, and I had to like play around with needle size to make sure it worked well with this fabric. So here's the button band here, and there's the normal stitch gauge. And I think because this yarn is a little bit thick and thin, that's what makes this kind of wonky edge. Whereas I think if I had done the ribbed button band, I'm knitting in the other direction. And so I think binding off, it would have been a straighter line. So that's a good learning experience for me. Like, okay, if I have more of a, what do they call it? Not homespun, but like sheep to skein, like farm yarn. There you go. If I'm using farm yarn, then it's more likely to be uneven. Like here's a more wonky part. And so like even after blocking, this yarn was thicker, so it's pooching out more. And this yarn right there was thinner, so it's going in a little bit. And so it's just gonna happen, and I'm okay with it. This is like a handmade, homemade kind of a thing. It's not gonna look store-bought, so I'm fine with that. And Nathan is too. I mean, he mostly just wears it downstairs in the basement. He doesn't have to take it to like work meetings or anything, so it's okay. But now I know, like if I have a more thick and thin kind of yarn, but I still want a straighter button band edge, maybe don't go for the double knit, maybe go for a ribbed, because it's more likely to be straighter vertically. But yeah, it did take trial and error to get what would seem to be like a good button band gauge. And you do the button band last. And so when I finished the button band, I put on the buttons, I think, and then I blocked it, and I had Nathan try it on, and it was so funny looking. So I had made the button band too tight. So what happened was the cardigan just totally pulled up in the front, and it looked really weird. It had this kind of like shape like this, and then it went down in the back, but the front was riding up way too high. And so like, oh, bummer. Well, I know how to fix it, but it's a bummer. So I knew that since the button band was the problem, the button band had to get pulled out. And thankfully, I had tried PetiteKnit's cool new buttonhole technique, and I'll put a link to that video by Kimmy Malcolm in the description box. But it's a way of making buttonholes in a double knit button band where you don't have to break the yarn, and I am so happy that I did that, because then I could rip out my button band and fix it without having a bunch of tails everywhere and a bunch of tiny pieces of yarn. So that was great. So I pulled that out, and I said, okay, while I'm at it, are there any other, changes you would make? After enough questions, I came to find out, like, okay, if I'm at it anyway, let's just make it a little bit longer, like an inch or so, and we'll just make it spot on. And so I lengthened the body a little bit, and I put extra length in the stockinette part. I redid the ribbing, bound off, and then I did the button band again. This time with, I think, bigger needles. It could have been the same size as the body needles. I'm not quite sure. If it wasn't the same size, then it was similar. My Ravelry project should have that info. But yeah, so it was interesting. But really, the changes didn't take that long, maybe a week. It really wasn't that bad. And now it fits. So now it looks really good on him. Yeah. the pattern was definitely a pleasure to knit. I would be more than happy to knit another one of these cardigans. I think it is so classic and pretty, and I would love one for myself too. So maybe one day I'll make another one. My next finished object is a pair of socks. So I haven't made socks in a long time because previous winter I got a whole bunch of holes in my handmade socks, and that just totally killed my sock mojo. It's like, come on, I get a hole the first wear, or I get a hole after a week of wearing a pair of hand knit socks. I'm like, oh, it's totally just not cool. And I like to wear my socks in shoes because otherwise it's kind of like, I don't need that many house socks, and that's very impractical for me. I'm in and out all the time. I don't want to have to change my socks every time I change shoes. It's just too much fuss. And so it's like, okay, I would love to wear them all the time. So if they don't stand up to wear, then there's not much point. And so anyway, so that's why I kind of fell out of love with sock knitting. But after a while, I was like, okay, well, maybe it's okay to try again. So back in spring, I was feeling rather sad, and there were some things I was just like sad and stressed about, and it was just like, oh, I don't know. I really want something to just perk me up and help me feel better and all those things. So what is something I can do that is just happy? And normally I try not to do retail therapy, but this time I gave myself permission. It's like, okay, Carrie, go to your local yarn store, have a look on the clearance shelf, or just look, even if it's not, just look for the brightest, happiest pair of sock yarn you can find and knit yourself a pair of your favorite socks. And I'm like, that's what I want to do. And so I went over to Willow Hill Yarn Company. It's in Gardner Village. Highly recommend it. Emily, who owns it, is so sweet and kind. I love her. Anyway, I went over there and I had a look around. I was kind of hoping there would be hedgehog sock yarn there because she's sold it before. She sells it periodically, and it's always bright and it has lots of happy colors. But she didn't have it that time. And so I was like, okay, well, what else is there? And so I found this really cool gradient sock yarn. I was like, ooh, I like this. And then I happened to look in the clearance shelf and there was some of it in there. And I was like, ooh, perfect. And so this yarn is Lane du Nord Paint Gradient Sock. And I chose the colorway 13. And it's not the brightest in the world, but these are totally my colors. Sorry, I have been wearing these actually, so they're not in like the most pristine condition. But oh, I love it. It's like light purple to dark purple with orange in it. And the pattern I chose is Kevään korvalla, and I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but it's a free pattern on Ravelry. I highly recommend it. I think this is my third pair of socks in this pattern. It truly is my favorite. Like, I know when I was experimenting with a whole bunch of different like sock techniques and constructions and things, I was finding out what I liked in a sock, and one of the things I really like is stretch. So like ribbed socks are great because they'll hug your foot well, but I like patterned socks because they're more interesting to make and they're really pretty, and this is the best of both worlds. Because of the stitch pattern, it like functions like ribbing, because it basically is, except that there's some knit and purl details in there. So it's super simple and easy to remember. Like, you can just read your knitting and know exactly where you are. It's no problem. So yeah, tubular cast on, which is my favorite. Twisted rib. The normal stitch pattern, which is just knits and purls. I think this was on like an Eye of Partridge heel or something, you know, heel flap and gusset style, and then a wedge toe. So there's like a little bit of pooling, but it's not bad, and yeah, I love them. And it's a wool and nylon mix, And I'm definitely in the camp that loves nylon because so far if I've tried, I think, one non-nylon pair of socks and they immediately got holes in them. So that was a big bummer. I was really sad about that. So I'll probably try it again at some point, some different like non-superwash, only wool socks. I'm willing to give it a try again, but let's just say I'm not super confident about it, but that's okay. Yeah, I love these. I've been wearing them, and yeah, so far so good. No holes yet, and nothing looks like it's getting thin, so that's a good sign. So my last finished object I don't have with me because it was a gift knit and my friend has them now, but they're a pair of mittens by Ieva Ozolina. It's from the Latvian mitten book. They are called the Mara mittens, and so I'll insert pictures here. But I used Jamieson and Smith yarns, which is my go-to for these mittens. I think this was like my 5th pair or something like that. I've done several, and yeah, I love them as gifts. They are so fun, and I was curious to try out some different needles for them. In the past I've used like 1.5 millimeter DPNs, and they have worked, but I've noticed that I have to pay attention to my tension. Oh, that's funny. And because sometimes, like when I made mittens for my mother-in-law, one mitten came out bigger than the other because I guess I was more relaxed, or I don't know, knitting tighter for one or the other, and that was a little weird. Thankfully it blocked out, but it was just like, I wonder, like, if I just increase my needle size and pay less attention to how tight I'm gripping the yarn and the needles, can I like just be more relaxed and chill about the process? So I was curious to try that. So I decided to just use sock needles. I used 2.25 millimeter, like 40-inch needles for magic loop, and I don't see why not. And it was interesting. It was a really fun experiment. It wasn't perfect, so I don't think I would do it exactly like that again. I was able to get stitch gauge, which was fantastic. Stitch gauge was great, but my row gauge was bigger, so I actually had to stop the pattern repeat before I was intended to because they would have been too long. And yeah, so things to learn. I think next time I might just buy a different pair of like 40-inch needles for a magic loop because I really like that. It was a lot less fuss to use magic loop than to use DPNs, and that's more what I'm used to anyway. So I think I would do that, but maybe just go for like a 2 millimeter instead of the 2.5 that I was using, and I'll see if that works. I think that would be nice. And my second takeaway is typically, like when I'm making the mitten, you start here at the cuff and you work up, and when you get to the area where the thumb is going to be, if you do it by the instructions, you put in some waste yarn there like as a placeholder, and then you keep knitting the rest of the mitten, and then you kind of pick out that waste yarn and then knit the thumb out of that. And most of the time I knit past that spot without even meaning to, and because I forget, and I just do like a complete afterthought thumb. But this time I was good, and I put in the waste yarn, and then I realized, oh, because my row gauge is weird, it's not going to be in the right spot. So that's part of the reason why I had to change the way the pattern was, and thankfully it looked fine. It wasn't like, the design wasn't such that it would be an issue. But note to self, just do a total afterthought thumb again. It's easier, it's less to think about, and you have more flexibility about how, like, where and how deep on the hand you can put that thumb. And so I think next time I'll just stick to that. It's easy, and yeah. But it was a fun project. Again, it only took a week. This was my fastest pair yet. Like, typically it would take me like 2 weeks to knit a pair of mittens like this, but this one only took a week and it was pretty fun. So I would totally do it again. I have plans to make myself a pair this time. I really want fingerless mitts because I actually bought the yarn for this project years ago and I just never have gotten around to making them. So my goal is this year, I really want to make my fingerless mittens because I love doing stuff outside with the kids, but when it's cold, I want to wear mittens. And I'm always taking pictures of them, which was part of my technology issue that has me filming the rest of this on a different day. But anyway, so when we're out and about at a Christmas market, I want to take pictures of my kids, but my hands are cold, so I'm wearing mittens and I don't want to keep taking them on and off. So it's like if I have fingerless mitts, I can push the buttons and like get stuff out and it'll be a lot more useful. So that's my goal. I really want to make these fingerless mittens this year, so that's my dream knitting. But anyway, the yarn I used for the Mara mittens for my friend is Jamieson and Smith, my favorite, and this is the main color. So I had, oh wow, it is so dark. This is technically navy. I think they call it dark navy or just navy. I used 50 grams, so two 25-gram balls of navy. It's number 36. I had a little bit left over, although if I had done the mitten to pattern, I would have used more yarn. So if you get gauge, you might have less yarn than that left over. And then I used all of the main contrast color. I used every bit of that up. So I really lucked out with that one because I bought this yarn before I learned to get like 50 grams of the contrast color. So I only had 25 and I just barely made it. And the main contrast color I used, I believe, is FC56 mix. It's a light purple. And then this one was the second contrast color. It was mainly around the cuff and it's a darker purple. Oh, no, the main contrast color was FC21 mix because this one is FC56. So this was the secondary contrast color. Yeah, it's pretty. My friend's favorite colors were navy and purple, so that's why I chose these. And yeah, I thought they came out well. And now let's talk about works in progress. So my first work in progress to talk about today is one you've actually seen before. And that's how long it's been a work in progress. But this is the sweater number 15 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. And I am using Juniper Moon Farms Patagonia Organic Merino. I love this yarn. This is one of my desert island yarns. I think it's great. It feels wonderful. It is so soft and woolly and squishy, and it has great yardage for its weight. It's very versatile, and it's at a really good price point. Or it's like a much better price point than a lot of nice yarn, I think. And so, yeah, I'm making mine in the color Sand, which is, the number is 118. Here's what it looks like. Oh, I just love it. It's a great neutral. Yeah, it's really good. I had to go up a needle size to get gauge, which is totally fine. And this project is, and what's funny is that this project is like my first time trusting like that yarn doesn't have to be knit super tight to be okay. In the sense of like, I was just noticing that most designers and most people seem to knit yarn at a looser gauge or a more open gauge than I did. And I was like, why is that? Like, why? I don't get it. Like, don't you want there to be like no holes between your V stitches? I was like, well, I'm just gonna give it a try. Let's just see how it goes. And it's really helped me. And so I think this was my first swatch with the suggested needles. I believe she suggested like 4mm needles or something. And it's beautiful. And this is more of like there's no holes that you can see. It's very not see-through at all. And so it's one that I was very comfortable with. However, it didn't meet gauge. So I was like, well, let me size up and see. And so this is with 4.5mm needles. And it met gauge. And yeah, but guess what? You also can't see through it. And so even though it felt holy, like if I hold it, I'm not sure if it'll work. There's not much light on the other side. But whenever I hold it up to a window or light, I can easily see where the holes are. So it's definitely holier than I was used to knitting. But I decided to trust the process, trust the designer, and it's working. I'm very happy that I tried this, and I don't know, it's like opened up new worlds. So it's like I don't have to make everything super tight. And yeah, so I believe the last time I showed this on the podcast, I had cast on and I had knit the back yoke, and I'd started on like the front pieces because it's drop shoulder. You make that thing and then you pick up and you knit down to the front. But I don't believe I had connected them in the front yet. And then I set it down for months and didn't touch it. And so I was like, well, why do you do this? You don't typically abandon projects like this. What happened was I was in the middle of a cumulus tea during summer, and I got incredibly bored with knitting stockinette on tiny needles. And it's like, okay, I need a break. I need to do something else. I want something more interesting. I need something new. This is just crazy. And so then I happened to be at a yarn store with some family, and this yarn was on sale. And so I was like, this is a great time to try something new. And so then I got the yarn and then cast this on and worked on it for the rest of that time that I was with family and all the things. And then when I got back, I decided to finish the cumulus tee, did that, but then I just went on to other things and never picked up sweater number 15 again. And so finally Christmas rolls around. So it's like cast on in July, knit for like a week, and then set it down, pick it back up in around Christmas. And so I finished the fronts, connected, got it connected in the round, and I knit several inches of the body, I think. And then I set it down again. And several months go by, most of a year probably. And it wasn't until like maybe a few weeks ago that I started, or a couple weeks ago, I don't know. I started getting all of this motivation to like just clear the decks. New season, finish up all those lingering whips. Let's just get some things done and like have that good sense of like clear accomplishment, like nothing's hanging over me, let's just get it done. And I felt really excited to work on this again. And back when I was working on it around Christmas time, I was getting really bored of the repetitive cable stitches, because you've got all these cables and they all have the same, like you're basically knitting ribbing for a bunch of rows, and then all of the cables happen on the same row, and it just got so repetitive and I got bored of it, so I went to other things. And but now when I picked it back up a few weeks ago, I was at a place in life where it's like, this is exactly what I want, this is perfect. And so I picked it up, and like all of that initial excitement from starting the project came back, and it was so much fun to work on. And so I just kept going. So I'm actually almost done. I'm so close. This is it right now. Really all that's left to do is finish a cable repeat and do the hem ribbing, and I'm done. Like, this is great. Here's the back detail. I love this detail where like that seam where the back and the shoulder meet is a cable also. I just think it is so pretty. I'm making the size extra small, but I think I could have, like, now that I have more experience, now I think I know I probably would, if I did it again, I would make the size smaller, whatever next size is up. And because it's not quite as oversized as I thought it would be. That's okay. The fit on me is like it's not fitted and it's not oversized. It's just kind of normal. It's like a normal fit. And I think I was expecting it to be more oversized, but that's okay. It still looks good. And I knit it to pattern exactly. I'm pretty sure I'm bang on gauge, but it's interesting to notice that even doing that, there's still modifications that need to be made just to get it to fit me properly or anybody. And so I knit, like, I stole this idea from Francesca of the Italian Knitter, I think, but I knit all the body, all the sleeves, didn't do any hems, and then I blocked it. Total, like, wet, block, and dry and everything. And then I tried it on to see if I needed to add any length before doing the hems, and I am so glad that I did, because I did need to add more. I'll put a picture in of, like, pre-block, post-block. That one actually wasn't quite as dramatic as I thought it would be, but it sure felt a lot different as far as, like, close fitting this and that. But also, I knit the sleeve length exactly to pattern, and they're so short on me, so I don't know, I'm not quite sure why. Maybe I have long arms, or maybe my gauge was funny, or I picked a weird size. I'm not quite sure. But I had to add 2 more cables, so you might be able to see it, but this is the length of where it was when I blocked it, and then I added 2 more cables and then an inch of ribbing at the end. So this part is not blocked, this part is blocked. You can kind of see how, like, that's closer together. It'll open up more when I block it. Yeah, so I've added more length to each sleeve. I did the same thing on this side. And I tried it on, and it fits a lot like it looks in the pictures as far as length. I also knit the body to the same size. I know I met grow gauge, because measuring my sweater, she said after this many cable repeats it should be this long. Mine always measured correctly. So I guess I just have long arms or a long torso or something. That's okay. But anyway, I tried it on, and for, like, body length, like, it looked good, but it was kind of that weird feeling of, like, it feels a little bit short. Like, I kind of just want to tug it. It's like, I'm not quite sure. It's, like, not totally comfortable with the length. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to add another cable repeat and do the hemming, and that should get me to my comfort level, to where I'm not, like, thinking, oh, is it riding up or is it too shorter? And, like, that weird, awkward feeling. I'm hoping it won't make the proportions look weird. We'll see. So I'll give it a go, and we'll see how it goes. That's okay. Yeah, I have plenty of yarn, so I can make it as long as I want. So that's really nice. But yeah, this should get finished up in no time. I'm very excited about it. It's so cozy, and I found several fun, like, pants that I could wear with it. I have these, like, navy blue velvet pants that are like, oh, those will be really cute with this, actually. So I'm trying to make this the right length to go with those pants, and so we'll see if I can. My next work in progress also uses farm yarn, but this was a gift from my mother-in-law from a friend of hers that she had made, like, ages ago, and she just discovered it again and was like, I don't know what to do with this. And so she gave a bunch of it away, and thankfully I'm a very happy recipient of it. But yeah, it looks like this. It's the most beautiful color brown. It's actually really similar to this. I love this color brown. But yeah, it's like not too warm, not too cool, a nice medium shade. Just, oh, I love it. And the only information I have is that it's been washed. I think that's funny. I have no idea what fiber this is. It's kind of, I'm pretty sure it's a bulky weight. It's 2-ply, and it's extremely soft. Like, it's softer than my CVM yarn that I had spun. It is, like, I would not at all be surprised if it's merino. It is so, so soft. Very squishy, very airy. It doesn't feel dense. It's very quite nice. So it's fun. Like, oh, I haven't knit with bulky yarn in ages. So what do I do with it? And like, bulky knit patterns were totally off my radar. I didn't even have like, oh yeah, I could do this one or that one. Like for DK weight patterns, like I could think of a bajillion ones that are like, oh yeah, this one's fun right now, or I just saw this designer came out with this thing. I can't think of those offhand for bulky weight yarn. So I had a fun search on Ravelry to find something to knit with it, or something to make with this yarn. And I came across the Wabi Sabi Cardigan by Milena Juhola. I'm sorry for getting that wrong. But it was so cute. I love that it's like wide, boxy, and cropped. I really don't have anything like that. It's a cardigan, and I thought it would be a really fun way to test out that style and see how it works. And especially since it knits up so fast. I think I made the bulk of this in like 3 days. And I wasn't even like hardcore knitting at all because I was doing lots of other things. This just goes so fast. Which is really fun. But this is how it is so far. So it's very wide and cropped, and it has balloon sleeves. And one of the special features of it is that it has these kind of Latvian braids. For these braids, I don't really know what a Latvian braid is. It might be one. But they go across the middle of the back, and they go along the top of the shoulder seam. This one actually, it might not technically be a Latvian braid, but it looks exactly like it. I'm trying to remember the construction for that. I think that was, anyway, but they have these braid details going on over, and I think there's a couple different ways of making them depending on where you are in the sweater. So that's the middle of the arm. And let's see, yeah, so I had finished this one. And then there's another one like right before the cuff. I believe I may have decreased, I can't remember if I decreased more or not. I'll have to look at my notes. I knit this in July and it's now October. This is another one of my lingering whips that I haven't gotten back to yet. So I'm gonna pick this one back up to work on after I finish sweater number 15. So I'm unfortunately really hazy on the details, but next podcast, whenever this is a finished object, I will be much more familiar with all the details that I've been making with it, and I'll give you the whole scoop. But yeah, let's give it a try. It'll have like a collar and button band and stuff, but it doesn't have that yet. Let's give it a try on. Very oversized, but oh man, it's gonna be so cozy. I can't wait for this to be done. Oh, I'm excited to wear this. Yay! Okay, now that I'm trying it on, I'm really excited to pick this up after sweater number 15. This will be a fun one to wear. I'm also excited to make another one of these, but I want to try holding multiple strands of yarn together instead of using bulky weight yarn. I think that would be a really fun way to play with color, kind of similar to the Stitches sweater. Oh man, I'm tangled. Okay. But yeah, kind of with the color and yarn ideas from the Stitches sweater project, like imagine holding like a worsted weight plus a lace weight plus maybe a fingering weight. I don't know. I'd have to swatch to see exactly what weights would meet gauge. I think it's like a 15 stitch gauge. I think that's right. I can't remember, but it's big, and it's just, no, it might be even 12 stitch. I'll put here whatever it is. But it was really fun it's just like a fun and different thing to do. And I think combining different color yarns will be a fun way to play with color. So I definitely would want to make another one of these, and they're so fast. I think you could knit one in a week without even trying. Like, it just kind of knits itself because it's such a big gauge. Yeah, it's really fun, and I'm really enjoying this yarn. So that's all I have for today for knitting projects. But aside from knitting, I've also been really busy doing other yarny things this year, and so I thought I might give you an update on what I've been up to with that. So just because I haven't been doing podcasting doesn't mean I haven't been making. So I'm very excited to share with you all the things. So back in 2020, I started dabbling with yarn dyeing, and I finally opened my Etsy shop in like 2021, I think it was. And it's just been a hobby here and there as it happens since then. And last year, my grand project was to do this like fleece to skein thing. So that's when I picked up the couple fleeces in Moab, had them spun here, and then kept some for myself, sold some on Etsy, and that worked great. So the money I was able to make from that yarn, I decided to put towards this year's project, which was doing a deep dive into color. While I really love the whole like local fiber process, I love the finished product, I love meeting all the people. Like, I've met like the farmers and the places and the people as part of like the people who do the spinning. Like, just everyone was just so amazing. It was such a good experience to just get to know that part of the fiber community. I totally want to do it again, and I plan to, but in order to do what I wanted to do for color, I needed to buy lots of yarn and be able to rebuy it as needed. So I decided to focus this year on bare yarn from wholesalers, and I would try out a bunch of different ones, pick what I thought was the best and really cool, and use that yarn to, you know, really practice on color and try a bazillion different things, get exactly the right colors I'm looking for, and create a real collection that I can like build off from there. And so like January through June, I was working on that like pretty exclusively, and just like really like focusing on like how do I find inspiration? How do I figure out what colors I'm looking for? Do I dye with this technique or that technique? Without buying a bazillion different jars of pigment, like I use acid dyes. So without getting a bazillion different jars of color, like how do I get the colors I'm looking for by mixing them in different ways? And that sort of thing, just like really getting to know the process through and through. And I dyed so many skeins. So it was so much fun. I learned tons. Like, I still definitely consider myself a beginner. Like, I'm new, I'm learning so much, but this was such a fun project, and I learned so much, and I want to share what I've learned with you. So my plan is, hopefully my next video will be like a behind the scenes of creating a yarn collection where I go through all the colors and all the steps of like how to make a yarn collection. Where do you find inspiration? How do you whittle things down? How do you, like, once you know what your color goals are, how do you get there? And that sort of thing. So that's what I would love to show you in the next video, is kind of just behind the scenes of all of the yarny goodness and colors coming your way. So I'm very excited to do that, and yeah, so hopefully I will see you very soon, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching, and happy knitting. Bye.
Close the curtain. brew some herbal tea. Reach out for me. Oh, and take my hand and lead even when I disagree. Rest sweet me. Close the curtain. Brew some herbal tea.